We are here today to discuss results of Recharge's first mitochondrial study. So welcome Zulia and Natalia from the R&D team. Let's start just very briefly explaining, how do you measure mitochondria? Like, mitochondria is like the buzzword of the times, and lots of people watching this will have heard about it and know that it's about energy production in the cells, and this is the key to health and longevity, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to measure, is it?
Exactly. There are hardly any methods which directly measuring mitochondria available, especially commercially available for people to use. There are some scientific lab tests, and typically as a gold standard, they use a muscular biopsy to harvest human cells and then count number of mitochondria. However, we didn't choose this method because it's invasive. This is also quite painful for patients to go through. But we wanted to actually find a specific test which would reflect not just number of mitochondria, but the quality of mitochondria we have. Because people could have all sorts of number of mitochondria, but if they malfunction, there won't be any use for the cell. In this case, we're talking about specific me-screen test by Verséa company. And this me-screen test, it's a patented mitochondria assessment. And this is my validated mitochondria assessment method, which aim to study how energy being produced by the cells, how energy has been managed, and also how energy adaptation happens at the cellular level in response to variety of stresses. So in a sense, what it does, it literally affects, it literally evaluates function of mitochondria.
And it uses only a finger prick test of blood. So quite a large comparison. And
Much easier to do. And so how many people were part of the study?
It's a pilot study, so eventually it was 10 on each group, 20 people.
Okay.
We did an evaluation of chronic fatigue patients, so 10 chronic fatigue users and 10 athletic.
All right. And let's dive into what the results were of the study.
Well, I personally think the study went really well because the results we got quite phenomenal. If you consider that this is stimulation with light, which is most ubiquitous thing on Earth. Yes, we all exposed to light since we are born, and this light therapy does not have any side effects. It has such a tremendous impact on at least people who came to our study. And I'm really, we're both really excited to share with this result.
Yeah. So let's go through it. If we start with the athletic population that you have as part of the group, this is of course a group that is looking for tiny margins anywhere, that is already high performing, trying to put on a lot of load. What was that month with FlexBeam like for them in their subjective reporting, and what did the blood work show?
Well, we saw in the athletic population that it was very interesting that there was a difference between the athletic population and the chronic fatigue population in how their mitochondria also responded.
Yeah.
So in the athletic population, they had an increase of subjected energy around 12% increase between day 0 and about 10% increase by day 15, and then another 2% increase, some circa by day 30. So a lot of the gains were actually made within the first 2 weeks. And that we saw across both populations, both the chronic fatigue and the athletic groups.
The biggest impact first couple of weeks.
The first 2 weeks was the biggest impact. And we also saw in that athletic group that there was a little bit different parameters of the mitochondria that were increased. So they had a mitochondrial energy waste was 20% less. They were able to use their mitochondria more efficiently, and the mitochondria used energy more efficiently for the athletic group. There was also minimalized use of glycolic reserves, so the anaerobic use of energy was decreased in the athletic group, meaning that the mitochondria were able to use more of the respiratory chain with oxygen system. So that was interesting that we saw in the athletic group, but we did not see the same kind of reduction in the chronic fatigue group. In the chronic fatigue group, we actually saw an increase in the energy use.
Yeah. So to summarize, on the athletic side, we saw 10+% improvement in their subjective scores and correlation at the blood level for aspects of the mitochondria. This, of course, if you're an athlete or a would-be athlete, this is already a very significant gain.
Absolutely.
We know from experience working with these kinds of cases, these kinds of people, that often highly trained, high-performing people have smaller gains than populations that do not necessarily have as much training or exhausting their body. So now it's interesting to look at the fatigue population. So how did those results come?
Well, it was quite significant. The results were statistically significant, more so in chronic fatigue population. Why? Because people with chronic fatigue, they have actually mitochondria almost non-function. So people so fatigued, they like bedridden, hardly exercise, hardly even walk for them. It's a massive effort. So their mitochondria is so exhausted and it's almost near their constant crash state. And of course, when we introduce energy overrides into their system, their body system, what happened first, that their baseline respiration actually has increased. Normally, when you do intervention, baseline respiration should stay stable. But in chronic fatigue, it's increased because the cell started to breathe for the first time. And after a while, it gets stabilized. So by day 30, this process stabilized, which also show, and it's according to physiological response, normal, good physiological response. So what we've seen in like approximately was between 50 to 30% increase in mitochondrial reserve capacity. So mitochondria started to gain energy and got physically recharged. So that's what exactly we did. We recharged mitochondria. So it started working and handling energy processes in cell. And this is all was already shifting away from exhaustion to operational state of the cell. So the cell was able to handle daily stress. Another aspect is mitochondrial efficiency itself has increased by between 10 to 20%. So mitochondria didn't waste so much energy and processes become more linear, more efficient. And again, 10 to 12% reduction in this backup pathways, what Natalia is describing is inefficient anaerobic functioning relying on glycolysis was actually reduced. So this is quite significant. In a sense, we got the cell out of state of emergency into state of more or less normal function. And again, Natalia mentioned that this process is already kicked in 15 days, just 15 days from start of use of FlexBeam. And they carried on the same trajectory to 30 days.
So what did they report, the users of this the fatigue population? What were their own results? Like freshen.
Amazingly, it correlated. And when you think, when people in the study experience quite significant years of being so chronically ill and fatigue, this is significant. But the beauty of it, so that for the first time, we compare the results subjective with actual objective and at the mitochondrial level. I'm really thrilled to report this.
The mitochondria went from emergency to efficiency.
Yeah, in the course of 2 to 4 weeks, really. Of course, it's thrilling to see. We are not so surprised because we worked with this for a long time, but it's always thrilling to get the feedback when you have it externally and objectively so. But if we summarize it briefly between these populations, we had results in both athletic and fatigue And even if we account for them being broken down by different parameters on efficiency and potential and so on, is it fair to say roughly 10+% improvement in the athletic population overall, and then 30-ish% in the fatigue population?
Yes.
Yeah.
And very important, all of it has been achieved with a result not bringing oxidative stress. Because typically, increased mitochondrial function associates with the increase of production of reactive oxygen species. However, our study shows that when you use light as a source of support for this particular patient, you do not produce any oxidative stress.
Can you give an example of this to understand what the importance of the oxidative stress and another method that might yield oxidative stress that's not light?
Let's give example, which I know from work of Dr. Schultz. He always described mitochondria is like an engine. So it works like your engine in the car. But engine has exhaust. And exhaust, this is production of this oxidative species. And because exhaust typically through negative processes accumulates in the cells, and this exhaust then makes the cells to age. So processes of aging also associates with accumulation of reactive oxygen species. So it's a negative process. So when it's produced in a big quantities, it's actually not a good thing, and cell goes down. So we know from studies, academical studies, for example, Michael Hamblin, he talks about that overall photobiomodulation as a light therapy stimulates production of your mitochondrial engine, but it produces small amounts of exhaust, of reactive oxygen species. And that is beneficial because it kind of kicks and triggers cellular protective mechanisms. But in our study, we demonstrated that using FlexBeam with these patients chronically fatigued, stimulate their engine for energy production, but not stimulate production of oxidative species.
So cellular stress, but without, or cellular effects, but without side effects?
Yes,
Yeah.
you can put it straight.
Okay. Interesting. So this is, of course, we can only speak to the specific study we have done, but it's always tempting to try to think of this as indicative potential. Like, do these results correlate with your own experience with just users? I mean, you've treated hundreds, if not thousands of patients in various ways, different patient groups. You've tracked results over time on an individual basis. This is the first time we can do this systematically with blood work and objective study, but how do these findings correlate with what you see in the field every day working with it?
I can speak about my personal experience because I have seen patients who were chronically fatigued, and their result was accumulative. Often, you see some results after the very first session. People become much more active and are able to speak because, you believe me or not, but people with chronic fatigue sometimes are so fatigued and tired, so they can't even speak. For them, speaking is losing energy. And so what I observe after the treatment, that they become much more energetic, but they also become talkative. So they start speaking, the voice, that energy of the voice is present. But effect is actually building up. Each session builds up on the previous. So effectively, what I see over a period of time, like 1 month, 2 months time, up to 6 months, you have like a very clear path to improvement in energy production, and people just regain normal activity and they back to social life. Would Natalia, you?
I also see the same. I understand that the red light, the photobiomodulation, rather than infrared light, that does stimulate the body's own processes of recovery, of repair. So these reactive oxygen species in small amounts, like you said, cellular protection. And what I see is that the body learns how to heal itself. It gets that stimulus from the light. It's absorbed. These are biological processes that are in our genes, that part of our evolution. but the photobiomodulation, the light heals the body, and then the body learns to continue to heal itself. So even if you did stop the study, you have prolonged effects, even not using the FlexBeam. But like you said, with time and depending on how chronically fatigued they are, it will take time. It doesn't take one day to be chronic fatigue. So patience and regular use, and the effects will come.
Great. Were you surprised at all by these results? Was there anything in the results that were surprising?
No, I was expecting this, but I was kind of openly expecting them because that's what I observe in everyday practice. People do recover and recover sort of like from variety, because fatigue is also very generalized term. Yes, because you could be fatigued just having a hard day, or maybe you fatigued because of some inefficiency of your body. But regardless, across the whole types of fatigue, people, we observe consistently on daily basis improvement when people use FlexBeam, especially as a routine, as a ritual in a sense.
Great. So to round this up, I'm sure you're thinking already about the next study, what you can do from here. How would you like to proceed with a future study using this method?
Yeah, I think number one, we need to increase number of patients participating. So because the bigger the group studying, the bigger we see the better cuts. Number two, our studies show that people who are actually diseased, they respond better than people who are healthy. So in a sense, I kind of want to help those who's really suffering. So I would go for studying bigger group with the chronic fatigue.
And I'd like to see a longer study as well. We did 30 days, 1 month, which the span of time of chronic fatigue is quite little. So it would be interesting to also compare increases in decrease in fatigue and increase in energy over a longer period of time.
And I think would be in terms of assessing athletic preparedness or athletic ability to recover. I'd like a study which correlates with mitochondria, with subjective, we will use questionnaire, and also data from variables. Like right now, we have like watch, we've got Oura rings, we've got things people wear on the body to see how the body parameters changes. And I would like to see particularly effect on HRV in correlation with mitochondria and in correlation with in-person stuff.
HRV meaning heart rate variability.
Yes. Very, very interesting. Any last thoughts on this study for listeners who are probably curious which group they fall into? If they are athletes or chronic fatigue, or what would it look like for more regular people in the middle, who are neither of these groups? What would you guess the possible results be?
Well, result, it speaks for itself. It's you optimizing your energy. So this is fundamental finding in this study to say, we found that after stimulation with red light produced by FlexBeam, your mitochondria produce energy much more efficient way. Whether you're fatigued or not fatigued, this is actually scientific fact now.
No. Can you think of any kind of treatment that would have this level of effect so quickly? That's in 10 to 30% range, depending on the people, kind of improvement over time, just from light alone? I mean, it sounds like a lot.
I would say if you have an infection, antibiotics would work in this.
So how did it go? Where did it start?
No other comparable.
What happened?
Comparable. I would say, exercise is always important. We have to think about the things that are complementary. This is a complementary treatment. This is not the one thing to do. If you have bad nutrition, your cells are not building themselves correctly, if you're not moving, then your body can't have the muscle mass it does. But as a complementary treatment, compared to other complementary treatments, I don't think there's anything else out there.
Yes, it's 100%. Absolutely. You mentioned about nutrition, but I think if you specifically target your recovery with nutrition which impacts mitochondria, that would be a very good combination. Yes.
And in this case, to emphasize this point, the only difference in people's lives was FlexBeam in 30 days. They didn't also do any nutritional changes or activity or anything. So from one variable alone.
One variable alone.
Got it.
FlexBeam alone.
Super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing, and good luck with the next study.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Look forward to doing it and presenting it.